Thank you. And just to add to what, tell me your first name again, I'm sorry. Right. Danielle was saying, I remember this movie, the documentary reminded me of it. When I was growing up, there was jobs everywhere. I remember a lot of people moving from the South to Michigan and Chicago, and they were getting jobs and buying homes and cars and had big families. Because in my family, there was like 9 and plus 4, something like that. And nobody was complaining. They bought big baskets of groceries. The mothers were not working. The fathers were working. And I remember all those jobs, and all of a sudden those jobs were not there anymore. They were just gone. The factories shut down. Small businesses started to fade away, and they were just gone. And then they were telling us that we need to go to college. And when the people went to college, they started building like businesses, like these stupid businesses around now. And then I noticed that, and this documentary laid it out so well, that they are now getting rid of what they did was they sent the jobs that we used to do over to other countries, and they call it cheap labor. I'm saying that's amazing. They would put us out of work so they could gain money, the businesses to gain money, and that we the people suffer. And then they started building these tech companies now. And so they were getting rid of the businesses by forcing them out of business and bringing in these tech companies now. And they were doing it for the money. It's all about the money. It's like, wow, I'm like, everything's the same. Everybody is the same. Everybody doing the same old thing in one way or another. It was mind-blowing to me that they sent all the jobs away like that and let the American people suffer. It's almost like we didn't see it happening. It's like we just looked around one day and all the jobs were gone. And we were like, what the? And then we were scared. Now we got to get college educations and things like that. Remember the plumbing jobs and the little simple jobs? Everybody used to do those things. Now it's rare. You can hardly find a plumber. And so I was thinking, and then I saw your hand, right? Oh, yeah. Okay. And then I was thinking about how right now they make us fight one another over dumb stuff. Really, think about what the people fighting over. It has no meaning. But while you're fighting, they're moving the jobs away. If you have to call Verizon or somebody now, you're going to get somebody in China.
The Philippines.
Or somebody in the Philippines, and you don't even understand the language, and they don't understand you. I'm like, let me get an English person. But every time you dial the 800 number, it goes to the Philippines. I'm like, when did this happen? It's hard to get direct a U.S. speaking folks from these companies. Did y'all know the jobs are gone?
Yes.
To the point that when you have trouble, and you like me, you don't use the computer a lot, you gotta call up somebody so they help you through it. You can't get no English-speaking people.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this democracy or republic? What a mess, huh? And then I went down to the Verizon company, and they had to go. I'm like, I can't get an English person on the phone. They're like, no, sir, everybody yelling about that. So I'm not the only one yelling about it. And so now they're trying to put us out of business by bringing in the tech companies for the investors and the tech people. They make buku money. And nobody paying attention to that. Because every time they come up with a new toy, they give it to the millennials. They're just so caught up in it. They don't know anything else that's going on. They're so caught up with the new phone, the new watch phone, the new this, and the new computer, and the new that. And you're losing jobs again. Yeah. And what's it going to take to wake up? And then I say, your hand. And I noticed that they got us fighting. And I was thinking about this fight between the transgenders and the normal people. Like they're out there fighting one another, right? Literally fighting one another. So I thought, I wonder who got us fighting over something dumb that we all know is dumb.
Right.
We all know this is dumb. This shouldn't be a fight. We know a man is a man and a woman. Ain't no question about that, right? But they got to fight, and they're like seriously fighting. Riots and all kind of stuff happening, right? And I'm thinking, I wonder who got us doing this, because whoever got the people fighting over this mess, they up there doing something else and we don't know they're doing it. They are doing something else that benefits them. And when the fight is over, we're going to be like, what happened? Where are the jobs? Where are the this? Where's the? How come everything's so expensive? Because the regular people are asleep, fighting one another. It doesn't even make sense to fight over transgender. When is it going to solve? You know what I mean? And so the question was, is it because most people were Christians or believed in God? It wasn't, oh, and they were showing back in the 50s and the 40s and the early 60s, jobs and families and everything everywhere. And you were right. We used to leave the house and just have to lock the door. And never even thought for 1 second somebody might break in. It wasn't even a thought. Crime was unheard of. Really. And if we ran up on somebody that was an alcoholic or something like that, we just laughed. It wasn't no big deal. And things were working. But it wasn't because most people believed in God. It was because the men were running it. You had fathers in their homes, and the mothers were home watching over the children and doing what they do. It was because that order was there. Even if the men did believe in God, they still ran their homes. And there was no question about that. But when they got rid of that home life, they took the man out. That's when they started catering to the ego of the woman, giving them free stuff and all that kind of stuff. And then one thing just led to another. Now we're in a mess. Isn't that something? Because I know a lot of people that did not believe in God, and a lot of people who said they believe in God didn't believe in God. But they were decent people anyway. You know, they weren't like idiots today. Amazing, huh?
Yeah.
Nice. Last word, and then Sean want that last word.
Double last word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so critical that to be awake to all thoughts are all lies all the time, even as it applies to the structure and the beginning of this country. And just, Danielle said it, yes, all those things are true. We didn't lock our doors, X, Y, Z, but we also weren't looking at politics. And if you're going to bring up a timeline of when certain things happen, I think it's very critical to look at the timeline of when everybody not only sold their, maybe wasn't even aware that all thoughts were all lies all the time, but on top of that, sold their mind to however information is being received without getting
distracted.
to whatever. So
Yeah.
I think when you really pan it out and you look at this, how it started, what was going on, and how evil works when when evil sees something good working and God moving, it's going to come in and create a distraction, a lure, a ploy, and eventually what happened at some stage, and you could argue that where in the timeline, humanity as thinking critical people that are operating and building things gave over their mind.
Yeah.
And that is actually the devil, but if you just want to look at it pragmatically and, a contextualized black and white, that's what's happened. And it really makes sense that we are where we are because we've lost, we don't even have the wherewithal to even understand that all thoughts are all lies all the time.
And you're right, and to add to that, what needs to happen, we need to come back to our senses. We need to come back to, as somebody said, being an individual.
Yeah,
we lost that. Yeah. Everybody just groupie now and think like everybody else and running from this group to that group, and ain't nobody paying attention. Whereas in those days they did pay attention, and they mentioned that in those days when things were really happening, the people controlled the government. They would vote in the right kind of people. If they didn't work, they voted them out because the government was smaller then, and so the people had more control over the government. But then that started to change. They started to build a big government, and everything started to change in that area as well.
Absolutely. It makes sense if you look at it from a spiritual battle because, and I think, and people gave up their thinking, when things got comfortable and you were doing your own thing and you had the freedom, the devil steps in and he's like, well, I'm going to give you 40 new television channels and 300 new magazines and X, Y, and Z, and we're going to build this thing, and now we're going to convince you that you need to do college, you need to da-da-da-da-da. And it just, really, you have to pull back and look at everything really, truly from a spiritual battle, and you have really, it all makes sense.
And now they're into the AI thing. And the young people getting all excited about AI.
Yeah.
I'm like, AI, don't accept everything that comes along.
But I know,
you have to
but
pause, and
right.
AI going to put everybody else out of work, out of business, out of work.
Absolutely. I mean,
and then now you're going to be
they,
struggling, AI going to be rich. Because you wasn't paying attention.
Right, but I don't know how to
What?
ring the bell.
Well, hey,
AI gonna be rich.
It's the only way to
yeah, AI gonna be rich. Because the people are already jumping on board with AI. AI, how do you pray? AI, which way to Mississippi? AI. I'm like, don't be using AI.
Right.
Yeah.
Write with your hand. Cursive writing. Remember when people used to write? I bet a lot of y'all never wrote, huh? Okay, real fast, and then don't shoot it. Nobody else raise your hand, please.
I just,
We gotta have some spiritual talk. Yes.
I just wanted to add, also, the mass media plays such an integral role in our lives. And back then, when things were running more smoothly, we had actual journalists by definition.
Yeah.
But now we have a plethora of activists who are conveying the news in quotation marks to us.
Yeah.
And
I
telling
guarantee-
us what to believe.
That's right, but I guarantee you, if Americans start to think for themselves again, that will fade away too. Because if you think for yourself and you just don't take AI, just because somebody said AI is faster and AI can do this, right? The people would stop, the media would change, everything would go back to normal because the people would come back to normal instead of being so caught up.
It's such a challenge, though, because I find myself in conversations with people who just regurgitate what they've heard on CNN, and the more...
Don't mention a name.
Oh, pardon me.
No, different medium. Because and we at church.
I know.
We're trying to help all people.
I feel like I'm just like with a group of friends right now, so I slipped. I forgot I was in church. Sorry,
Don't get
people.
too comfortable.
No offense.
Right. But we're at church. I'm just trying to wake the
it.
people up. All right. It's just a mess what's going on. And this documentary made me realize how it used to be.
Right.
Go ahead.
So yeah, what I was saying is that the more and I don't think I want to add anything because I might slip again, but you get the point.
Yeah, and because of that, we're becoming more enslaved now too.
Right.
We're so subject to the world around us rather than being individual free thinkers.
Yeah.
And free. You're right about that.
This politics talk, I could talk about this for days.
Here and then the last word.
Yeah, I mean, I think in 1900, three out of four people still lived on a farm in the U.S. In 1900. So if you're talking about the order of God in a time when that existed, you think about a nuclear family that lives on a farm, and when you say, man over woman, woman over children, I think a lot of people might ask themselves, what does the woman over children part of that actually mean? And on a farm, 4, 5, 6 years old, those kids would be handed over to the father to work the farm. They would grow up with their father. They would grow up in the spirit of the father after 5 or 6. And by 18, they'd be more mature than people are today at 40, 50, 60 years old because they grew up in those formative years right next to their, being taught by their father.
That's true, but it wasn't because most people believed in God, though.
No, not
and most people
necessarily.
didn't have value. It's just that for some reason they lived that order where the man was the head, right? And because I know that during those days people were slap makers and all kind of stuff, right? But they still had lived that, they weren't they still lived.
Yeah,
in the right way.
and whether they believe in God on a you know, in a
Right.
rural setting like that, where you have a nuclear family being self-sufficient and growing their own food, that's not a group of people you can control. They can't. They won't
Right.
be controlled. They're
That's what it is.
self-controlled. They, you know, so those are the type of people who really do believe in small government because they're like, we can't. You know, no one's going to control us.
You're right about that's what it is. Though they were not all believing in God, they couldn't be so easily controlled. But right now, people are easily controlled because they're not in control, and that's the difference too.
Right. So, in your experience growing up, in those type of sharecropping situations with families growing up
Yeah.
in a nuclear family, was it around 5 or 6 or 7 years old where the kids would be, you know, handed over to the father? That mother over children part
Yeah.
of the order would only exist for the first 4 or 5 years.
Right. Yeah, because I remember I think around 5 or 6 was when I would definitely listen to my grandfather, or when I was up north, my father or my stepfather.
Right.
I don't hardly remember my mother or grandmother. If they told me what to do, it was because Dad had said do it. They didn't
Yeah.
tell me, well, your dad gone now, you don't have to do it. But boy, you better get up. Your dad will be back home soon.
Right. And now in the families, the moms are, you know, reprimanding their kids well into their teen years.
Yeah.
And even into their 20s.
It was because the father was there. That's what it was. And not necessarily they all believed in God. I don't even think I ever see my granddad go to church, or I never heard him mention God. Not once. But his attitude, his personality, it stood out. You knew he was Dad. You know, you better get up. Okay. Last word.
Just a quick statement.
No.
It's the Federal Reserve.
No, see, no. Yeah.
33.
I grew up in that time era where men were like that, and men were the boss, and
That's what it was. The men were involved.
men were patriarchs. Men were leaders.
What's that?
The boss, the leader.
Oh, but they ain't know about no patriarch.
Well, they loved the patriarch.
Oh, that mean patriarch mean the man leader?
Man was leading.
Do you know I
Man
never
was
heard that
strong.
word until I came to
Patriarch.
California? I just heard dad and daddy.
They only use it. They use it as a negative because they don't like the man being strong, being the leader, and kids were raised in a family with a strong father, and they were kind of bright. I remember.
But I don't blame they though. I blame the individual, because men don't have to be weak. Just because somebody try to distract you or somebody try to make you weak, it's not their fault that you're being weak. I would counsel with a family, and one of the in-laws is raising hell in the family. Would come over to the family and just raise hell, and the men would let it happen. I'm like, whose fault is it? Is it the person that coming to your house and raising the hell, or you that are allowing the hell to happen? Because they would complain about the person that was raising the hell, but what about you? This is your house. Why would you let the person raise hell? That makes sense?
Yeah.
Stop looking at somebody else, it's on you. What do you think about that, Frankie? Make a long story short.
You're talking about me.
Don't tell your business.
I don't care.
You're supposed to tell your personal business. We could have discussed it without saying who it was, man. What the? Okay. But anyway, I want to get to the biblical question.
Yeah.
We just had church. Was that helpful?
I don't know. It was interesting.
It was interesting.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it interesting to anybody else?
Yeah.
What did you get from it? What did you get from it?
I just got to learn a lot that I didn't know about
Yeah.
democracy, and I mean I knew some
And
things
republic.
about in the 40s and 50s because I like watching things from that era. So I seen what you were talking about, how businesses and were going good and stuff like that. So yeah, it was definitely interesting.
It's interesting. I pity Me, I don't feel that, but I pity the people who are born now and born in you guys' generation. You don't know that those things really existed.
Right.
You don't know that there was family and we used to leave the doors unlocked and when gas costs a quarter. A nickel or a dime or something a gallon. Remember those good old days?
Did the documentary that you watched, did you have to dig for it? Because you don't even, they don't put that out there. You don't
How did I
see
find
that.
it? Oh, I was just flipping.
Okay.
You know, sometimes I flip because the other TV stuff is so boring now to me. Frank, you remember when gas was 10 cents? Yes or no? No long story.
No,
You don't remember that?
no.
Really?
25 cents when I,
Well, you died. Oh, Joe, you remember 10 cents, right?
I was a kid, but
Yeah, right.
I do remember putting 35 cents in my buddy's car when we would go out on Friday night. 35 cents.
Isn't that amazing? All that went away and we weren't paying attention.
The good old days.
Yeah.